What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Hawks Turn Room podcast, hosted by yours truly, David Lee, aka D Lee 43. Big time win for the Hawks tonight. They're now 2-0 versus Orlando on the season. They played this team 3 times over their last 10 games. If you go back to last season, very strong defensive performance out the gates for the Hawks. Recently, they've sort of found themselves behind and trying to have to play catch up throughout the game. Tonight was a little bit different. They pretty much led for the majority of the game, finished um, like I think with a 112, 127 victory. Overall, they led for 45 minutes of the game. Orlando led for like under a minute. Big time fast break performance. The Hawks had kind of struggled scoring in transition. In tonight's game, they added 11 points per 100 possessions in transition. They also limited Orlando pretty decently in transition. They started off the quarter or the game with a really strong defensive first quarter. There were some decisions made in the fourth that made it a little bit easier for the Magic to claw their way back just a little bit to make it just a little bit tense. But the Hawks were able to pull away. Um, Another big sort of point of emphasis to how well they played defensively. Orlando shot 51% at the rim. That's in the 7th percentile. The Hawks overall held Orlando to just 9.92 points per 100 possessions in the half court. For reference, the average half court offensive play in this season of the NBA is 0.97. So really strong defensive performance considering who they're facing. Now, I will say, after having watched this Orlando team and the 2 times the Hawks have played them in some other games throughout the season, this is just not a good offensive team, and they do a lot of things that sort of make it really hard for themselves. Okay, like they're not a very fun watch. I do think it was a little bit not reductive, but I guess like simplistic to assume that adding one elite shooter was going to solve everything. Like this half court offense still needs a lot of work. I thought the Hawks did a pretty good job. Somewhat adjusting some of the things that I put in my preview for this game. So I'll just screen share really quick to sort of highlight those particular things before we talk through the actual game on a clip by clip basis. But in my preview, something that I really wanted to emphasize is that uh, Orlando has been using Paolo a lot more as a roller, right? So he has a career high 39% rim frequency, which is where he should have been the entirety of his career. He's not taking as many like CTE moment jumpers from the mid range. But a big part of Paolo's sort of deficiencies as a roller, right? If we zoom in on this clip here, he is not the most athletic guy, right? So when we watch him on this possession against Miles Bridges, look how little he gets off the floor. And he does this quite frequently. I think some of this is because he has a knack for drawing fouls, but also just in general, he's not a very vertical athlete. And so against guys with length who can contest him vertically without fouling and being disciplined, you can make him an inefficient rim finisher. So we saw some of that from the Hawks tonight. We also saw them navigate these off-ball screens. This is called wide action, which is basically an off-ball screen to get a player getting downhill. Typically, you'll see Orlando use a guard to set that screen. So here, LaMelo's guarding Tristan da Silva. So when that away screen comes, he obviously can't switch on the Paolo, and then Paolo's able to get downhill. I thought the Hawks did a really good job passing off assignments. Again, we'll look at some of those clips. And then from the Hawks perspective, like you got to be able to score out of movement, especially against a really strong isolation defense. And we saw them see some effectiveness out of that. Dyson Daniels in particular was getting downhill virtually at will, which is a very welcome change from how he's looked to start this season. I think that the Hawks will have to figure out a way to somehow keep him pretty involved in the offense, even when Trae Young returns. I think that's one of the challenges, though, of course. Like Cherry is such an amazing on-ball creator, and Dyson doesn't have the most shooting gravity, so it can be tough to figure out a role for him offensively. But I think at this point, he's sort of from what we've seen from him, he's just at his best when he can sort of function a little bit on the ball. I'm not saying he has to run every rep, but it's just helpful for him to sort of like be involved in the offense. But without further ado, man, let's get into the defense. I thought that this was a very strong performance from the Hawks. They somewhat match up favorably against a team like Orlando. We know for example, Mohamed Gay has had a lot of success against Paolo Banchero in some of these matchups. And again, it's that same point to where Paolo is a very strong player, but he isn't the most athletic, right? So here in this semi-transition possession, you're going to see the Hawks jump out at the Magic and be very aggressive helping off the corner. This was key for them because while Jet Howard's a really good shooter, with the way that Zach closes out here, he's kind of cutting off any pass there, and Kristaps is in well positioned to contest, and then the Hawks can sort of pass off assignments from there. And so when Paolo drives, and this is kind of the example where I'm talking about where the Magic kind of just complicate things for themselves, and Paolo in particular, look how he gathers on the left side of his body. And I think he just kind of forgot that Keaton was there, and the ball gets stripped, and now the Hawks are going the other way. So great job playing in the passing lanes by Keaton here, and I think it's just Paolo just isn't paying attention. I think Keaton did a good job of looking like he's only looking at Jalen Suggs here. If you look at Keaton's eyes, it looks like he's looking straight up the floor. And then when Paolo drives, he just forgets about him. And the Hawks were very disruptive all night. This is another good play as an example of how they were able to contain Orlando in the half court. So generally speaking, the Hawks did not want Zachary Risacher on Paolo Banchero. So this is that same sort of like guard action to get a more disadvantaged defender guarding Paolo. So this is Anthony Black in the screen. It's going to force a switch for the Hawks, but Mohamed Gay is going to, you see he motions to Nikhil. Hey, someone pick up Anthony Black. I'm going to get back to Paolo Banchero. And then when he's able to get back, Paolo's holding, he's waiting, dribbling without making an advantage. And then when he does make his move, Mohamed Gay is fully capable of swallowing that up on his own. The Hawks don't need to bring a lot of help, and he's able to force the rim miss. And now guess what? The Hawks are running in transition. And sadly, Zachary Risacher missed that lob dunk. But this is like a great example of just how valuable forcing rim misses are, because when you have that offensive player fall down, it kicks off a fast break. Now it's a 4-on-5, and the Hawks are able to generate a high-quality look. Let's take a look at another possession in the third. I want you to notice, first off, just how late in the shot clock a lot of these possessions are coming. And that's a good sign of a defense that's been able to pass off assignments, communicate. Orlando in general is not one of the quicker decision-making teams. And just another example, again, of how they make it a little bit tougher for themselves. But I think the Hawks did a really good job individually tonight, sticking to the assignments, cleaning up the glass. Here is Zach using his hands effectively, contesting any sort of putbacks. You see the Hawks shrink the floor here to dissuade any sort of drives. Because Orlando has two guys in the dunker, so they've got Wendell over here and they've got Paolo crashing. It makes it easier for them to shrink the floor. Even Nikhil is pretty active, helping off the best shooter. Dyson's got maybe 10 feet of separation from Franz. And so the paint is just clogged. And this is sort of like my overarching point. Like, if there's more time on the shot clock, maybe you can get this to Desmond Bane. But because of the situation, the Hawks can afford to be aggressive. And they did a good job stymieing that drive, turning it into a tough fadeaway. And then Jalen's just able to out-athlete Paolo on the rebound, which he kind of emasculated him multiple times on the glass, which I think I did say that clip as well. Here's an example of Orlando trying to use off-ball movement and handoffs to get Desmond Bane free. Zach does a great job disrupting the immediate handoff, and then KP is going to rally to the ball after that attempt at a steal, contest a shot. And then this is big, and this is something that doesn't show up in the stat sheet, but this is what the Hawks really need from Zach on a more consistent basis. But he goes to attack this rebound, and he takes that putback opportunity away from the Magic and turns it into a semi-transition opportunity for the Hawks. So if we slow it down a little bit, maybe I think you can slow it down here. You'll see that when this ball comes off the rim, it's Zach who's able to knock that away from Wendell. And Wendell is a ferocious offensive rebounder. In general, the Magic are very prolific on the offensive glass. So they needed his help on the glass, and they did a good job generally gang rebounding. The Hawks also were just pretty good at forcing these guys into tougher shots. So Franz is one of my favorite players in the league. He's a very skilled offensive player. So on that pump fake, he sees how Dyson's hips are opened this way, right? Which sort of shuts off any baseline option. If he tries to dribble around that way, Dyson can easily slide with him, and you've got the baseline as extra defender. So Franz tries to attack that lead foot to the inside. Good stunt from Luke Kennard, leads to a spin, and Dyson attacks. He's able to disrupt that shot. And then again, here's Zach once more poking the ball away from Wendell Carter, even though he's at a physical disadvantage, helping out KP on the glass because no one got a body on Wendell. And these are the types of plays that win games. That's going to be registered as a rebound for Keaton Wallace. But if Zach is not active on the glass, this is likely another putback opportunity for Orlando. And again, when you're playing an offense that struggles so badly, you cannot afford to give them easy buckets on the glass or by turning the ball over. And you got to be able to rebound as a team against them. And in some of the possessions I watched from their first matchup, Orlando was sending 3 guys to the glass. Now, this is just more so an example of how complicated I think the Magic are making it for themselves. They have Desmond Bane, Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, and Paolo Banchero, and Jamal Mosley is playing on lineups without any of those guys. And I think that is beyond ridiculous. I wonder if And I was talking with my guy Ryan. We did a live stream over on Playback. I was just like, hey, is this just a experimentation thing? Like, help me understand why they continue to do this. And by do this, I mean not play the most conducive lineups to winning. Now, they only played 3 minutes over the course of the game with none of their like star creators on the floor. But I just don't necessarily see what the point is. You're kind of somewhat just punting on these minutes. You're not putting your best lineups on the floor. You're not getting increased synergy with your best players. It doesn't make any sense to me. They also played 6 minutes with Paulo on without any of the three guys. They played 3 minutes of Franz without any of the other guys. Like, what's the point of not staggering these supposed all-star creators? And this is the exact problem as to why Orlando has Tyus Jones and Anthony Black currently with a higher on-ball percentage than Franz Wagner. And it's problematic. I don't understand it. Jamal Mosley would be incredibly frustrating if he was the head coach of the team that I was covering. And yeah, I do not co-sign this or understand any sort of rhyme or reason behind it. Now, this was the rare game where Franz's plus-minus numbers weren't more favorable than Paolo's, but I think it's pretty clear that this is just not a good offensive unit to put on the floor. No one's scared of Jonathan Isaac spotting up in the corner. You can see how aggressively Mo Gay is helping. And even with Mo Gay helping over so much, look how quickly he closes that distance. He's such an awesome defensive player. And the Hawks are easily able to get that rebound, especially with Tyus Jones running the pick and roll. Like, he has no scoring gravity. I see no rhyme or reason to be doing this. Now, this is the play I was talking about a little bit earlier where Paolo got emasculated a bit. Somewhat similar to the action I was talking about, but this is more of an on-ball thing. So they're going to set a ghost screen with Anthony Black. He's going to actually try to make contact here against Mohamed Gay. They want to get Paolo going downhill against a guard. Nikhil is going to attack that outside hand, which forces Paolo to spin. And then that gives time for Mohamed Gay to get back. Paolo can't quite make that read quick enough. And he doesn't even really consider Anthony Black as an option. You can see Tristan da Silva is like, hey, pass it to him. Also, side note, I really do believe that if Tristan da Silva was playing Paolo's minutes, this team would be quite a bit better. But when Paolo gathers, this is that inability to get a ton of verticality off the floor that I'm talking about. When he goes up against someone who's longer than him and can disrupt his shot without fouling, he gets in a tough situation, completely misses that shot. Jalen Johnson just rips it away from him. And now the Hawks instantly turn that into offense, and Jalen's able to finish at the rim. Awesome, Brett. This play, somewhat similar action to what we saw in the second quarter. I'll bring those clips up in a second, but sort of like running some off-ball action with Paolo and Bain trying to get a different defender into that screening action. Kristaps was awesome on defense tonight. He eats that bump from Wendell. Again, here's that help from Dyson on the strong side. So he completely leaves Franz. Probably gets a ham on that. I actually don't know if he got credited for that block. And then same scenario, Jalen pushes the pace. Again, Zach misses the alley-oop, gets it back and finishes. Big Zach game. And it's not coincidental that the Hawks are able to beat a team so soundly when they get reliable play from Zachary Risacher from their wing position. I thought Luke Kennard was pretty disastrous on defense in the fourth just because Orlando was mismatch finding so much. But in situations like these, like this is where positioning can help you beat, lack of length, lack of size, lack of defensive ability. But when that bounce pass comes to Goga, Luke is just able to beat him to it, knock the ball away, save a surefire like floater or temper layup. And somewhat similar here too. Oh, this may be a different possession. I'm sorry. But I thought that Desmond Bain right now is averaging 10 2-point attempts per 36 and 5 3-point attempts per 36. And then you would imagine that would be flipped for a team that needs its 3-point shooting so much. I think some of this is because of defenses really selling out to run him off the line. Like he's the sole shooting. Well, not the sole shooting threat. I think Suggs and Tristan are definitely capable, but he's definitely priority number one. So you're going to see guys fly at him like Dyson does here to get him off the line. And then he runs into KP. And look how effectively KP is able to cut off that drive and then also deflect the pass. Then the Hawks are able to recover the loose ball. So, again, KP was awesome tonight on both ends, and we'll take a look at what he was able to do as a foul baiter. Here you've got a high-low opportunity for Orlando, so they enter the ball into the middle, right? So this basically happened, cross-match. It creates Wendell Carter here. Franz had the ball, but this is a tougher angle to make this pass, like this lob pass here, especially with Jalen on the back line. So they enter it to Paolo instead to try and get a better high-low, and they want to throw it here. Jalen is still really not in great position. He's about to break on it, but Luke does a great job getting a hand on it. And that's just kind of what you got to do if you're not going to be the guy who's the biggest or strongest guy, the quickest guy. You got to be able to be disruptive, be in great positioning. And while there were some rough reps, which we'll get to, I thought Luke was better than he has been in games past. So early screen at half court to get Franz going downhill. He kind of fumbles it here, which throws off his timing. And then great individual defense by Onyeka. You could see how willing the Hawks were to help off of shooters from Orlando. Dyson is completely cutting off that passing lane. Franz wants to pivot and get this back to Wendell. Wendell is trying to set a Gortat screen. They're like not even on the same page. Another turnover. Hawks forced 18 turnovers tonight. They scored on the majority of them. Similar action. You've got a guard screen, but Paolo's going to reject it. When that guard screen gets rejected, Onyeka actually does a good job getting back into the play. He gets both hands onto Paolo, and then the spacing is just clogged. It allows Porzingis to completely absorb that bump and then just take the ball away from Paolo. So I thought they were on a string defensively tonight, man, and it's impressive. I'll pull up the particular sequences that I was talking about on playback. It was really cool to see the Hawks respond in real time to their magic we're running, and that it's a very simple action, but all this action is, and this is my guy Ryan on his playback episode, but they're really just running. We saw like a shade of this in one of the previous clips, but they're running sort of like a down screening type of action, but they really just want to set up a guard to guard, a guard screen or a go screen, a brush screen, whatever it may be, to try and force Jalen Johnson and Nickeil Alexander-Walker to navigate switching with Paolo getting downhill. So when that guard screen comes, of course, Jalen is better suited to contain Paolo, so they don't want to switch this action. With the way that Bane sets his screen, it was going to be tough for Jalen to get over, so you're going to see Nickeil try to cover that up for him, but no one gets back to Bane. And in this scenario, anytime you put one or two people on the ball, basically you have two options, right? This player, Jalen Johnson, needs to be completely selling out to stop this pass from going back to Desmond Bane, and then you either have him recover, Nickeil, or you pass off assignment. So that would mean that Luke Kennard would pick up Desmond Bane, then Onyeka would pick up, he would stay on Goga, and then Nickeil is going to peel all the way to the corner. But for that to happen, you got to be on a string defensively. You also have to have guys who aren't going to be disadvantaged size-wise, or at least guys who can process quickly, right? So Jalen does not deny the pass. I couldn't tell you what Jalen is doing here. He's not really pressuring Paolo at all. He leaves that pass wide open, and it's an easy three for their best three-point shooter. Can't happen. And you can see my reaction here. I wasn't happy. And I started talking about how frustrating it is to see that, because, that's the type of stuff you got to be aware of. Same action. They're coming down that same way again. This is called a ram screen, which is a down screen into a player who sets a screen. Usually you set it for a guard, for a center, but you can also set it for a guard. And this is just to create some additional action. And same thing, guard screen. This time, Jalen anticipates it, so he tries to get over it. Now Paolo's going to reject. And the reason he rejects is because Nickeil is sitting here waiting the hedge. So he wants to get away from it. He gets downhill. Luke is sitting there in his path. He gets around him, and he finishes and one contact. So the Hawks have now seen that action twice. They come back down. This is a good offensive possession from the Hawks. They're going to play through Onyeka in a pinch alignment. Pinch is when you enter the ball to the big, and sort of like there's another term for it I'm forgetting, but Quin used to play Clint Capella out of this as well. It's sort of like in the pocket. It's like the free throw line extended area, kind of like right above the break. They're going to run a handoff for Dyson Daniels. Dyson's going to attack Franz, get downhill, create a little bit of rotation, and then Nickeil gets downhill. He gets typically Orlando doesn't help a lot from the corner. They didn't respect Onyeka as a shooter tonight. He made them play on more than a couple occasions. Great ball movement, right? Now remember, Orlando has ran that same action multiple times. This time, same thing. Here comes the ram screen. Ram screen is the down screen for the screener, right? So Anthony Black wants to screen off Nickeil, and then Desmond Bane's going to come up and set a screen here. And same thing happens. Desmond Bane gets around. Here comes the screen. This time, Nickeil comes out very aggressively. He's showing he's being disruptive. He forces Paolo to pick the ball up. Jalen does a better job denying that kick out pass to Desmond Bane. Right now, you've got Dyson Daniels playing 2. Technically, these 2. And you see Franz cuts to the middle, which puts Luke Kennard on his back. At this point, Dyson is still playing 2. He can't exactly leave Franz here because Luke is guarding him. So when that skip pass comes to the corner, Anthony Black makes a really tough move. That's not the type of shot. This type of shot a team will live with. He drills it. It was a better defensive rep than once pass. Then what do we think Orlando's going to do again? Now, mind you, this is now 3 possessions in a row where they scored. This time they're not even bothering with the ramp screen. Hey, let's go with the guard to guard screen. Let's see if they're able to navigate it. They got Onyeka guarding Paulo now. Paulo goes to that same tween at the top of the elbow. He gets to a pull-up midi. Not the best shot. Hawks are whiff on the offensive rebound. Franz kicks out to Anthony Black. Then they give up another offensive rebound. No one gets a ball on Franz. You have to do this against the Magic. They score again. Mind you, this was after a 9-0 run to start the second quarter, though. Magic came out their timeout about 8 minutes and got straight to their best action, which is running the offense through Paulo and Bane. Well, I would argue their best actions with Franz, but sort of with the way that they want to play. This is one of their better actions. Paulo has the rebound. Hey, I wonder what they're going to do. Probably what's been working on every consecutive possession. Boom. Guard screen. Again, this time the Nikhil shows and he recovers. Nikhil's able to get back to Desmond Bane. Then they flow into somewhat of a handoff, or like more so of like Chicago action, which is you flow into a screen. Paulo slips it. The Hawks are aggressively helping. You've got a bunch of Magic players on this side. Ball gets tipped. Paulo fumbles it. This is somewhat frustrating for me as well. Jalen gets caught up trying to deny that pass so much he just gives up baseline. Can't let that happen. Foul. And now Paulo's at the free throw line. And that was 5 consecutive possessions where they ran the same exact action. Okay. The good thing is the Hawks adjusted. They didn't let them. Here's right after that possession when Paulo shot the free throws. Here comes a guard screen. Same position and same alignment. Nikhil shows, recovers. Also notice how much higher up the floor. Notice how Jalen steps forward just a tad. He's able to push him up the floor. Possession's dead. Now they gotta flow into the secondary action. You more than anything, you gotta stop the primary action. You can't let teams get to the exactly what they want. They flow into a handoff. Now Anthony Black is trying to initiate offense. Paulo post up. Again, the Hawks weren't very comfortable with Zach in isolation against Paulo. So Zach shows on the double. Then he relocates. They pass off assignments really well. So because they have that double, that meant that Dyson had to pick up Jonathan Isaac when that ball gets skipped to the corner. This is why I think it's this pairing of Dyson and Nikhil is so interesting, because they just cover like instinctually pass off assignments. So Nikhil is somewhat the furthest away from the ball, so he can get out to Franz Wagner on the skip. And then as soon as Dyson sees that Nikhil is going here, well, Dyson says, hey, I'll just pick up Desmond Bane. I got you, man. And look how quickly and easily they pass over the assignments. Now the Hawks are completely aligned. Now it's just on the Dyson to stop this drive. He breaks down. Look at the defensive positioning. Beats Bane to the spot. He completely loses it on the behind the back dribble. I think Bane was pretty frustrated tonight. And Dyson maintains it in transition, finds Risacher for an open transition 3. Bang. And so did they get punched in the mouth by the same action over and over again? Yes, for sure. But they did adjust, and they adjusted eventually, right? So with that, I still think Orlando should have continued to beat the drum with that particular type of action, at least starting every possession, but they floated to something different here. They're going to use Jonathan Isaac as a screener, try to get Franz involved in pick and roll. Another great example of how good KP was defensively. His hands were super active. So even on that bump from Franz, look how KP's hands come down. And Dyson flies in over the top. They're able to force, I think it's side out or baseline out of bounds here. And yeah, so I was impressed with the Hawks' defensive resilience. While this Magic team is, in my opinion, not making it as easy as possible for them. It's pretty good. They also make it very hard for themselves, if I'm gonna be honest. But I liked how aggressive Porzingis was against the free throw line, especially with Trae Young out. It's tougher for the Hawks to get to easy offense. He had 13 free throw attempts tonight. Drew drew opportunities at pretty much any chance he could get. He was getting to the free throw line. So here he's got a you're very deep against Franz. Um, Pump fake, that's a staple in his bag. And as soon as that reach comes, able to finish through the contact and one. I've said this multiple times. Anytime the shot clock is low, just get it to KP. Just get a KP because even if he doesn't get fouled, even if he doesn't make the shot, it's a pretty good chance that he's the best option with a short shot clock. And I thought that was pretty in tonight's game. This shot is gonna come off of the keel, so KP is just able. He just goes to set and seal the post. He goes to seal for a deep post entry, and he's able to sell the foul. I'm sure they're Magic fans, but honestly, a breath of fresh air for those who have watched the Hawks for a long time. You know, there hasn't been another guy who can draw this much defensive attention, and KB did a fantastic job on the glass as well. And then in the fourth quarter, where the offense got a little bogged down, they were able to get KP, and he's able to attack a mismatch. He's constantly able to get guys like this with his pump fake because he's so tall. It's pretty funny because I feel like with someone who's this tall, your contest probably isn't doing much, but guys are constantly jumping on this because they just feel like they have to compensate for the lack of height, and he's able to create a lot of contact in these situations, and it's definitely a very very effective way for the Hawks to get to any sort of offense. Now Dyson was fantastic tonight. I think that a challenge for the Hawks going forward will be finding a way to keep him relatively involved on the ball, considering that Trey's in the lineup. Dyson's spin is like his go-to driving move. Um, as of late, it didn't feel as crisp as decisive. This seems like he had a little more oomph to it, man. Especially because he's getting his shoulder incident before spinning. He was kind of just spinning by default in previous games, and so he's able to create a lot better separation here, and then he's able to finish with the floater. I still want to see him get to the rim more. I think this is a nice counter though, because Jonathan Isaac is certainly capable of glassing that shot if you attack him directly at the rim. Again, just look how quickly and aggressively and confidently he's attacking. In and out dribble, left hand, stutter, spin, get deeper into the paint. He's becoming a spin merchant. I'm not gonna lie, it's definitely his favorite move, and I do think teams are scouting it. I think that's why you've seen him struggle in some situations like that. But he also hit a three today, which is big. He'd only attempted 4 threes in 7 games coming in. That's just not enough 3-point volume. He's spent a lot of time talking about how much he worked on during the offseason, some of his in between game. I don't see a massive difference in his game so far, but I do think when he's able to get downhill and when he's confident, he seems a bit more comfortable in that particular area, playing up tempo. I love this steal. Very Jose Alvarado esque, but just great understanding of where Suggs is looking and how nonchalantly he's dribbling. Just takes it away from him, finishes at the basket. No one's better at turning defense in the offense than Dyson Daniels. They're in one of my Hawks group chats. I like that they said that. So they're basically like, oh, V and Kennard lineups are playable if Mo Gay's on the floor, and I definitely agree with that. But I think if you're going to play with Luke Kennard and V on the floor, you got to have guys who are willing to move, play off the ball, and give them options as cutters because these guys are like so wired as passers, and so this is a big time finish from Dyson. He evades the contest. Of course, he's capable of reading the floor bounces when Anthony Black jumps up, brings it back, finishes again on the right side because Jace Richardson, who's sneakily pretty bouncy, was trying to attack on the left side of the glass, trying to attack his hand on the left side. So pretty crafty finish from Dyson. He's at the top of the key, 21 seconds left. We're going to be creating from a standstill or out of a handoff. Same thing. Like I think that his counters have just gotten a little bit better, and this is going to go a long way for the Hawks. Understanding because a lot of times last year this was turning into a tough left-handed floater or right-handed floater, but turning this into a euro, a really nice step through, and then finishing with the floater is another great option here because of how congested the lane is. It's tougher to get all the way to the basket here. I like that he has it in his bag. I do wish he would dunk it more. I do wish he would put more pressure on the rim. I wonder how much of that is concerned about being able to convert at the free throw line. But I think it will come a time. I think the most important thing is that he's driving decisively and finishing. In general, he's shot 8 for 9 today. That's big. It's definitely really, really big. And this one was impressive too. The turnaround fader. I thought in general he's getting downhill, making good decisions. So I think he also assist tonight, if I'm remembering correctly. I like that they were able to scheme up a look for Zach in terms of this is a pin down screen. Force Desmond Bain have to go through a couple of screens before you can get around and contest Zach's shot. I don't know how I feel about Zach running pick and roll. There was a couple of possessions I was like, not sure how I feel about that, but I definitely was very encouraged with the way that Dyson was playing, and it's I think very similar to where Veet and Kennard are like these guys who are constantly pro-making and looking for the teammates. You gotta have guys who are willing to cut, and we know that Risacher can do that. And he caught Desmond Bain slipping and one finish off that drive from Dyson. Here Dyson's gonna attack Franz. This is a pretty impressive wraparound. I wasn't quite sure what the Hawks were trying to do here, mainly because of how Jalen spaced and the way that you know sometimes when you get an opportunity like this, you kind of want to get it to like I was imagining. Okay, maybe Jalen. When I saw this look, I'm like, okay, well maybe Jalen can post here, or maybe he's going to try to catch on the outside hand where Dyson can get it to him. So that's kind of made something out of nothing because you've got both guys encroaching on his drive, and he's still able to get that pass through to Jalen with Desmond Bain. Maybe that's the cost of having a short wingspan, but Desmond Bain was still kind of pinched down, and Dyson was able to get that over to Jalen nonetheless. This is that transition three that we just saw. This is off offensive rebound. Find Dyson in the corner, drive baseline, grab it around the Mokier. Quick, efficient offense. Now, I do want to touch briefly on the closing lineup that Quin Snyder decided to go with. So Zach played 26 minutes tonight. What interesting, especially because he was our leading scorer, and he was the leading scorer, scored over 20. Let me not say that without looking at the box score. He scored 21 points. He only played 25 minutes. He had the third highest plus minus on the team. Shot 14 shots, 4 from free throw line. He didn't turn the ball over. He only had 3 rebounds, but like I pointed out, he was helping a lot on the glass. So why is he not playing? Lauren Williams from the AJC asked Quin Snyder, is that on a minutes restriction? And Quin respectively denied to answer that question. And I think I've heard a couple of theories floated around. Okay, he's, they're trying to wrap him back up from Eurobasket, et cetera, whatever it may be. I think particularly in this game where the Hawks were trying to, their lead started to slip a little bit. Why was their lead slipping? Well, they were trying to defend in the clutch. Not in the clutch, I'm sorry, but they were trying to defend against a team in Orlando that really struggles on offense unless they have someone they can attack. And there's no better target, no bigger target, no greater target than Luke Kennard. But Quin Snyder opted to play the final 6 minutes, final 3 minutes. Well, sorry. The first of those final 6 minutes was with Luke Kennard. Timeout. Okay. After Orlando's been mismatching getting to the free throw line. Who's he going to bring in? He brings in Big Chris. And I found that quite curious because those guys have the same and very similar deficiencies. Like while they're good positionally defenders and they're active and they're going to compete, it just kind of puts the Hawks at a disadvantage when they have to try to contain that. Especially, I do think in general, from Quin's perspective, because the Hawks were very clearly not interested in having Zach match up against Paulo at all, he probably sees it as pretty much the same thing, right? Like if we're gonna have to help out Zach, then I'd rather have the live dribble playmaking ability or the driving kick ability of Veet and Luke, and then sort of like the static shooting ability of Zach Risacher. And I think that's because he doesn't necessarily see Zach adding that much more defensive value to someone to these lineups. But like this is just a good example of like some of the lack of lineup utility or the lack of versatility you have defensively when you're going to play V in a closing lineup. So when this back screen comes for Paulo, like there's no chance that the Hawks can switch this, which leads to KP having to cover it up. And then when this screen comes and V has to chase over it, he gets bumped off by that Wendell screen. And now KP's out of position because he had to get to Porzingis. And now it's an open floater. And Tristan Da Silva, who had a phenomenal game, knocks it down. So it's kind of like, is Zach changing a lot of this? If I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really think so. I don't think that the Hawks would want Zach to switch on onto Paolo, dive into the rim. I don't think Zach's getting around that screen much more effectively than V. I do think he's going to cause more. I do think that the Hawks should try to give him more closing minutes, but I don't think it's going to be materially different. Let me not say I do think it'll be materially different, but I think from Quin's perspective, I can understand the process. But I do think the Hawks kind of just need to close with Zach a couple games just to see what it looks like, especially when he's shooting and playing so well like he did tonight. I think he definitely earned the opportunity to at least try to close. I think the fact that Quin didn't go to him at all speaks volumes. And I think the fact that he opted to go for Kennard and Veet also speaks volume. I was definitely sure there's going to at least put Zach in after that timeout 3 minutes, 30 seconds ago. Maybe even Mo Gay. But against a team like Orlando, when you have such a big lead, I think that there's from the fans' perspective, it's like, okay, just get stops. There's a concept in football commonly referred to as like playing to not to lose versus playing to win. And that's like, playing conservative, taking field goals, not scoring touchdowns when you're up a big amount. There's a trailing phenomenon in pretty much every sport. It's true for in basketball as well. Teams with bigger leads start to play less effectively, less efficiently because they're trying to preserve the lead. But playing conservatively doesn't actually lead to winning outcomes, if that makes sense. So maybe that's where Quin's head's at. It's like, okay, we still need offensive juice on the floor. We kind of have these intrinsic disadvantages defensively already. I would rather go with the live dribble playmaking. I think that somewhat makes sense. Again, I would have gave Zach the ability to try to close tonight, and then I would have went to Luke and or Veet. I don't think my default would have been to not close with Zach. But big Zach game wasn't the best game from Jalen, although especially on the glass. But I do think the Hawks in general were better on the glass than they were in that first matchup. We're continuing to see what this offense looks like without Trae Young. Lots of KP featured post touches, inverted pick and roll for Jalen Johnson. Some schemed up plays for Zachary Risacher. You've got the keel flowing into early handoff, early offense. Continuing to see a lot of away screens and a lot of Iverson cuts for Luke Kennard. So for those who are subscribed to my Substack, I'll be getting out a tracker over the next couple of days where you can look at each play type and how the Hawks are performing on pick and rolls with Jalen Johnson, and how the post up metrics look. So we're like a very tailored, organized offensive tracker. So keep an eye out for that. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe. All the information is in the details. Again, thank you all so much for listening. See you in the next one.